Well, European leaders have agreed to dramatically boost their military spending after the U.S. froze all military and intelligence support for Ukraine. In Russia, Kremlin propaganda has celebrated the dramatic shift in the White House policy. But the idea of Russia's European neighbors now boosting their own military forces has been met with anger in Moscow.
This EU leaders' summit in Brussels is clearly irritating the Kremlin. Moscow has picked up on the fact that the EU is ready to boost defense spending and is considering sending peacekeepers to Ukraine.
The confrontational rhetoric and the confrontational developments that we are now seeing in Brussels and Europe's capitals are seriously at odds with finding ways to peacefully resolve the situation in Ukraine.
State TV hosts don't share Peskov's diplomatic etiquette. They were watching both the speeches and the looks of the participants.
The gathering itself resembles a meeting of cripples. Poland's Prime Minister Tusk hobbled past the cameras and declared that Russia would lose just like the USSR. So this Pole has injured not just his limbs, but also his brain. The President of France has completely lost his mind as well.
According to state propaganda, it wasn't just the President of France who lost his mind. They also called Denmark's PM Mette Frederiksen crazy for being open to nuclear weapons in her country. From recent reactions, it seems that state propagandists are most worried about Europe's unity in defending Ukraine.
This provincial Europe is being torn apart right now. Can you imagine how incompetent these people are and how little they have to do if they can afford the luxury of suddenly going to London, patting Zelensky on the head and showing Trump that they are against him?
Europe's unity and the sharp rise in defense spending can't help but worry Russia, some experts believe.
It is, of course, a challenge that the Western awakening to the realities of the war will, in the long run, present a really serious challenge to Russia. Even with China's assistance and having basically invested in its military-industrial complex, Russia is at capacity at the moment.
Meanwhile, Lavrov said that Russia has no intention of attacking NATO despite EU fears. He believes there's one person in the West who knows that Russia's real goal is to stop NATO's expansion.
President Trump and his team understand very well that this was the root cause.
This week, officials and state propaganda warmly welcomed Trump's decision to halt aid to Ukraine. Backed by the U.S., they hope to strike a peace deal with Ukraine, one that would favor the Kremlin.
More on this. I'm joined now by DW's Sergei Satanovskii from our Riga studio. Sergei, as we just saw in your report there, Moscow is nervous about the EU ramping up its defenses. How is Russia likely to respond?
Well, Europe is uniting and making big, you can say, the defense decisions quite quickly. Probably because of that, the Kremlin hasn't yet had time to decide on what they're going to do, and let alone creating a strategy. Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said that Moscow is closely watching what he called the EU's militarization. For now, only potentially, he said, this would become a cause for deep concern for Russia and in the future lead to specific decisions to ensure Russia's security, but no concrete steps have been announced so far.
We've seen the Trump administration aligning the U.S. more with Russia now and halting support for Ukraine, a complete reversal there. So does that mean that Russia is expecting Kyiv to now accept peace on President Putin's terms, or is Russia likely to make any concessions in ceasefire talks?
Right. Well, as Putin said yesterday, quote, "We don't need anything from anyone, but we also won't give up what's ours." And strangely enough, by ours, he means the occupied territories of Ukraine. In his view, Ukraine must withdraw its troops from the so-called DNR and LNR. They are the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine, as well as Kherson and Zaporizhia. And what's more, the Putin also insists that Ukraine must abandon its NATO membership plans, not to mention that now, of course, along with Trump, Putin is pushing for a change of Ukraine's president. So there is no talk of any concessions in his words.
How much concern is there in places like the Baltics, where you are, or in Georgia and Moldova, that President Putin could now feel emboldened to launch further military campaigns?
Well, it's true that now with Donald Trump in the White House, Russian politicians, propagandists, Putin himself seem to be feeling way more confident, at least in their statements. They seem to think that Trump is on their side. For example, Dmitry Peskov said earlier that U.S. foreign policy now largely aligns with Russia's vision, something that would have been unthinkable just a couple of months ago. At the same time, many experts say that they know the slow progress of Russia on the battlefield, which it won't be able to increase anytime soon. So, of course, Trump's the decision to stop aid to Ukraine was welcomed here. It was largely celebrated on state TV, but in the Kremlin, they also understand that the effects of this decision won't be immediate, and in the next couple of months, the situation might change significantly.
Sergei, thank you very much. That was DW's Sergei Satanovskii in Riga.